This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306.
All right, folks, I think we're going to get started. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 1 p.m. We're going to go around and just do some introductions. This is the first time that we are meeting. My name's Stella Pekarsky. I represent the Senate district up in Western Fairfax County, District 36. So really happy that you're all here to join us today and looking forward to the conversations. I think if we can start maybe down this way and go ahead and do that.
I'm going to watch. Hi, Tanya Milling. I'm the Executive Director at the ARC of Virginia. Nice to meet everyone.
Hi, Laura Jane Cohen. I represent House District 15 in Burke, Virginia, so solely in Fairfax County, and got to serve on the school board with our amazing chair.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Hayfield. I'm the Commissioner of Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services. Happy to be here.
I'm Ann Flippin. I'm the Executive Director of the Autism Society of Central Virginia and also sibling and guardian of a young man with autism.
Brian McCann, President and CEO of the Faison Center. We're here in Richmond, Newport News, and we provide a lifespan of services to individuals on the spectrum, all ages, all across the spectrum.
Hello, I'm Jamie Hanks. I serve as the Assistant Director of Special Education in Hanover County.
Hi, I'm Rose Neville. I'm part of the leadership team of the Autism Initiative at the University of Virginia called STAR, and I'm representing Charlottesville, Virginia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Parthy Denora. I'm the Executive Director of the Partnership for People with Disabilities, Virginia's University Center for Excellence on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities at VCU. I'm also the parent of an 18-year-old with autism.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tara Durant. I represent the 27th District in the Senate, which is most of the County of Stafford, City of Fredericksburg, and portions of Spotsylvania County.
Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Hope. In the House of Representatives, House of Delegates, excuse me. I represent the 1st District from Arlington County.
Hello, I'm Ethan Long, and I'm the President and CEO of the VIA Centers for Neurodevelopment. And we're located in Charlottesville, Roanoke, Lynchburg, and Lexington. And I'm also a licensed behavior analyst.
Good afternoon. My name is Mia Loria. My son is 17 years old, and he leads towards the high support needs of the autism spectrum. So I'm here to represent him and children like him.
Hi, I'm Jen Krajewski, and I'm representing the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities.
My name is Connor Cummings, and I am proud to be autistic. I advocate with my mom on the state and national level for disability issues.
Good afternoon. My name is Whitney King. I am a parent of a wonderful child with autism. I'm also a positive behavior support facilitator located in Virginia Beach. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you being here. And if we could have our staff also introduce themselves.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Julia Bergamini, and I'm with the Division of Legislative Services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Hannah Yates, and I'm also with the Division of Legislative Services.
Madam Chair, my name is Lindley Starzer, and I'm with Senate Committee Operations.
Wonderful, thank you. So the first order of business is we need to open the floor for nominations for electing a chair. So I will ask.
I have a nomination.
Okay, go ahead,
For
Delegate.
Chair of the Autism Advisory Council, I would nominate Senator Stella Pekarsky.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I will go ahead and close the floor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstaining? Thank you. I appreciate that, and hope I will make you proud. We do have a lot of work to do. So now we need to open the floor to nominations for our vice chair. Are there any?
I'd like to make a nomination.
Go ahead, Delegate.
I'd like to nominate Delegate Patrick Hope.
Is there a second?
No seconds. Dies on the second. No, lack of a second.
No. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll close the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Say nay. All right. It seems like we have a chair and vice chair. We're a team, a great team, and we're gonna go ahead and jump into the work of the council. I'm going to hand it over to Julia, who's going to give us an overview of how we got here, of our policy for virtual meetings as well, and kind of the backstory to this council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to do a quick overview of the virtual meeting policy that's in front of you guys. So this policy is very similar to virtual meeting policies adopted by other commissions and councils, so it should look very familiar to anyone who serves on those other bodies. And the language is modeled after sample language from the FOIA Council. So first, the policy covers remote participation by individual members. Under this policy, an individual member can participate in commission meetings electronically, and it's important to note that there is an additional House rule that limits this participation for House members. So under the House rule, House members may not participate by electronic communications, which means no voting or formal recommendations. For individual requests for remote participation, a member should convey the request to council staff, who would then relay the request to the chair of the council. For remote participation due to a personal matter, the remote participation is limited to 2 meetings per calendar year, or 25% of the meetings held per calendar year, rounded up to the next whole number, whichever is greater. Individual participation will be approved unless it violates this policy or the Code of Virginia. And if there's ever a time when a member's remote participation is challenged, then the council will vote on whether to allow such participation. So second, the policy covers all virtual public meetings. Under this policy, the council can hold all virtual public meetings. The previously mentioned House rule limits this as well. A council chair can schedule an all virtual meeting if the meeting is being held solely to receive presentations, updates, public comments, or conduct other forms of information gathering. And voting may not occur during a virtual meeting, nor may formal recommendations be made. Again, this is that House rule, so that's limited to House members. Requests for an all-virtual public meeting shall be conveyed to council staff, who will then relay the request to the chair of the council. And all virtual public meetings are limited to, by law, to 2 meetings per calendar year, or 25% of the meetings held per calendar year, rounded up to the next whole number, whichever is greater. And all virtual public meetings cannot be held consecutively with another all-virtual public meeting, so this just means no back-to-back virtual meetings. And finally, the policy covers minutes requirements. So individual requests for remote participation, requests for all virtual public meetings, and votes to deny individual requests for remote participation are all recorded in the meeting minutes of the respective meeting. Are there any questions?
You have a question?
No.
Okay.
Adopt it.
Yes. Motion to adopt?
Move to adopt the electronic meeting participation and all virtual meetings policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, that's unanimous. I think now we can move on to the bill establishing, or reestablishing rather, the council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Madam Chair just mentioned, the Autism Advisory Council was initially established by SB 1269 back in 2011. It was initially set to sunset in 2014. However, every 2 years up until 2020, legislation passed to extend that sunset date 2 more years. On July 1st, 2022, that's when it sunsetted and was reestablished in 2024 by SB 389, patroned by Madam Chair herself. The Autism Advisory Council is established as an advisory council for the purpose of promoting coordination of services and resources among agencies involved in the delivery of services to Virginians with autism spectrum disorders and to increase public awareness of such services and resources. It has a total membership of 25 members that consists of 6 legislative members, 12 non-legislative citizen members, and 7 ex officio members. It has, in fulfilling its purpose, the following duties: facilitating coordination of services and resources among those agencies that are involved in the delivery of services to Virginians with autism spectrum disorders, monitoring the implementation of action plans developed by agencies pursuant to a JLARC report published in 2009 titled Assessment of Services for Virginians with Autism Spectrum Disorders, recommending policies, legislation, and funding needed to implement the action plans developed pursuant to that JLARC report, as well as to address other emerging issues, and determine services, resources, and policies that may further address the needs of individuals with autism spectrum disorders in the Commonwealth. SB 389 requires the council to submit by December 1st of each year to the governor and the General Assembly a report on including progress updates and recommended next steps to be taken by those agencies in the following year. And as of now, the council has a sunset date of July 1st, 2027.
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you, Julia. Obviously, it took us a while to get started with the council. We had to wait for all our appointments, and it is November. My hope is that we are going to try to have another meeting in December, so please be engaged if you see any emails from us trying to coordinate that. But what we thought we would do today is just give us an opportunity. It's our first time meeting. I certainly want to hear from all of you what is on your mind. I think others would also like to as well. Issues, things you have heard about, things you are personally experiencing, or topics for us to work on and to discuss going forward. So with that, is there anyone who would like to get us started? Don't be shy. Delegate Cohen.
I know you knew I wouldn't be shy. For me, in off session, one of the things I've really been working on, and I would love input certainly from everybody on the council, but we had a bill last year that I know the chair was well aware of, HB 509, which would have had colleges, any public colleges or universities would have to recognize an IEP or a 504 that had been established in high school as proof of a disability. That was turned into a study that Chev did, report out. And one of their takeaways was that any IEP that had been, that was 3 years old or less should be used as proof of disability in our public colleges and universities. So I have that bill in. It has not been dropped, of course, but DLS has done a great job of rewriting that bill to remove the 504 portion, but does have the IEP portion. And so we've been working through with some of the colleges and universities who particularly spoke out in not wanting to have this bill go forward. So we've been trying to work with those schools in the off session to try to see what their concerns are and see if there's other ways that maybe we can get at addressing some of those concerns. A big one is the transition IEP piece, which I know, personally with a now adult with autism, I keep trying to remember that at 19 that I need to call them an adult, but to me, still my kiddo, of going through that process. And so for us, this bill was a result of, they're now a senior at VCU. When they walked in, big congratulations to you at VCU. It was seamless. We sent the IEP. They did a Zoom meeting and said what worked in high school, what didn't, and it's been such an amazing process. And all through the year, the 2 years they've been there, they've used their accommodations person as a touchstone when they're struggling in different classes. So I thought that was the norm, and I understand when you assume that you make all kinds of missteps. So in having conversations with a lot of other parents, and as I shared before, Chair Pekarsky and I both served 4 years on the school board. So in addition to what we have gone through with our own kids of kind of trying to figure out once we got here to Richmond, what were some of the things that seemed small that would make such a big difference for our students. So I'm really passionate about that one. I am working through to try to have it be a process that we bring the colleges and universities along with us. But I am committed that no matter where we wind up on January 8th, that this bill is going to happen this year. So I don't right now have a Senate co-patron, but I shared it with Senator Saddam Salim last time, and so just would really love input from especially the colleges and university folks and people who've been through this process if you have any thoughts or ideas, and very happy to share our draft. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Delegate. Is there anyone else?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, we'll get there. I saw that too. So thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, Delegate Cohen. I would love to talk to you some more about that. I've been working with a family that's actually not a constituent, but has a student at a Virginia university right now and kind of going through this, where this is not being reckoned as a disability and has proved to provide some major challenges. So love to get with you offline on that one and see what we can do for that one. Madam Chair, there are a couple of things you and I have talked about offline. I don't know if you want to do at this time, some things I brought over from the Behavioral Health Commission, and also one that I have thought might be a really good start for this commission. So I'll go ahead and do.
I think if there are no other comments on the delegate's bill, thoughts, comments, questions? Seeing none, go ahead.
Okay, all right, super. So the Behavioral Health Commission, there's a lot that I think that we have been working on. I've been on it since I was in the House that might make sense for this commission to take a look at. And I think we've talked about this before too, is building that continuum of care, which is and applying for Medicaid waiver to build and fund a continuum of care with the intent of increasing access to services for those with a primary or solo diagnosis relating to a neurocognitive disability such as autism or a neurodevelopmental disability. The continuum of care should cover community-based services as well as crisis intervention services, inpatient and residential neurodevelopmental treatment should also be a part of this plan. So that's one of them. And I can certainly submit this in writing as well. Second would be custodial interrogation. Prior to any interrogation of a person who is known to have an autism spectrum disorder or developmental disability or displays behavior associated with the developmental disability and who has been arrested, contact the person's guardian or next of kin and allow the person to have contact with such a guardian or next of kin. This would align with current requirements for juvenile custodial interrogation under the existing code and should include similar exemptions. So, and following upon that also, there is a interesting program that my chief of staff actually, who has an adult daughter with autism, came across out of Massachusetts that I'd love this commission to take a look at. It's a blue card program where all your identifying credentials, and I know we have something in the code that allows you to put on your license, but this is, I think, a little bit more expansive. I have not done a deep dive into what Massachusetts does, but it looks very interesting because you put your identifying credentials, your license, your registration, and any other pertinent information. I think that is a part of what is the training program for responding law enforcement in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So without having done a super deep dive into it, I think this is something that this commission could maybe do some research on. It could be something very beneficial so that we are averting this before it becomes a criminal matter. And finally, earlier intervention, which I think kind of goes in companion with what we're talking about, which is allow defendants diagnosed with autism or developmental disability to request a hearing to consider deferred disposition anytime after the plea. This allows the diversion process to take place earlier, allowing for an earlier intervention and working to keep people with autism and developmental disabilities out of the criminal justice system. So I'm happy to submit this in writing to this advisory council and see their thoughts.
Any thoughts, Delegate?
If I could just add to what Senator Durant said, which is I agree wholeheartedly. I guess it's more comment than anything else because she noted that the Behavioral Health Commission, which we both serve on together, does take up some issues that relate to autism that may not be the most appropriate place for it. And so I think that it's going to be important that we have conversations with Chairman Deeds over there to help them because they have a pretty heavy workload. A couple of issues that they are looking at related to autism. One is related to the assault of police officers, and they're looking at that issue as well. There's another issue as well that's come up recently where someone that gets a temporary detention order and is sent to a hospital, a state hospital, many of those individuals, they meet criteria, but they have autism, and so they don't have a mental illness. And so it's not very clear in all cases with judges, it appears, that who meets that criteria. They are a danger to themselves or others, or they're not able to take care of themselves. They certainly meet that, but they end up in the state hospital, which is concerning because they don't belong in a state facility. And so trying to figure out a solution to doing that. So I just bring that up because there are issues that the Behavioral Health Commission is looking at that fit more squarely into our purview, and I think it would be better to be examined here and come out with recommendations here. But the second thing, and my hope for this council commission, is that we become a body that looks at very weighty issues and makes recommendations to the General Assembly, because I think it can really matter when you have the recommendation of a commission or a council taking a look at these issues in the off session, being deliberative about it, getting all perspectives, and coming forward with a recommendation. So this is actually a body that's on the offense and trying to solve real problems. So those would be my comments, and I appreciate the floor. Thank you.
Madam Chair, and just expanding a little bit more, Delegate Hopus, I have a constituent who has an adult child that's been at the state hospital and has been in this vicious cycle of going through group homes but not staying eligible because of violence. And so there is this, I believe, the DOG settlement component that seems to plague every single piece of legislation I consider with it, that we keep abutting up to it. And so we have to keep that in the framework of the mindset because we want community-based care, and including housing, that does not leave us, I guess, less ripe for abuse and neglect, but also sometimes just, if you've got a lot of these different components that come into place, it makes it a lot more challenging to have a lot of different placements. So I guess we're going to have to keep that lens in mind.
Thank you for those comments. I've had some preliminary conversations around some of the issues that you brought up, Delegate Hope. And I do believe there's space for us going forward to coordinate and maybe look at some of the issues that have been brought up in the other commission and probably are more appropriately placed on our kind of work schedule. So I will be bringing an update on that at our next meeting after some more conversations. And I will say, Senator Durant, we've talked about some of these things that you brought up today during the last session, and I personally am very intrigued by what Massachusetts is doing, also as having an adult daughter who has developmental and intellectual delays. Very, very interested to get to learn more. And I would love to hear maybe the thoughts on that from parents or from others on this council, if they've heard anything about this or know anything.
I think Massachusetts is a fantastic model state for a lot of different IDD and neurodevelopmental services. We do in Virginia currently have a law that allows a designation of IDD or autism on the back of state IDs. The limitation of that is that many particularly autistic adults, do not want that self-identification for themselves. So I think because they are afraid of the stigma that comes along with it. And so I think such advocacy in this area would be really well complemented by additional education for community members and families about the advantage of this self-identification and supports that law enforcement in particular could put in place to help mitigate some of those concerns that they have, particularly around that piece. I also think that we could bolster some of these efforts that mirror what the Behavioral Health Commission is talking about by increasing coordination across regions. In services, there are opportunities now for households to self-identify and register as having someone with autism living at their address, which significantly improves the quality of emergency response that can be provided. But there's inconsistent implementation of that across counties and different regions of our state. So a coordinated effort, I think, would be a really helpful way to further some of the points that you made.
Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to echo kind of the involvement of adults with autism in this process. I think there's a lot of really strong self-advocacy groups, and I think they can carry the message better than anybody else. So I think, just really trying to engage with these people to encourage them to see the benefits and then work with them to communicate that to others in a pretty formal way would be wonderful.
Follow up on that. I think that's exactly right. And I think this council will clearly keep in mind the entire spectrum of those who can't speak and can't speak for themselves, who are nonverbal. And we have to keep that in mind as well in everything that we do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Over on this side, anyone want to comment? Okay. Go ahead.
There we go. Echoing that as a self-advocate and someone with autistic adult sisters, also very interested from an intersectional perspective. So I appreciate the discussion around coordinated efforts because I know research is still ongoing around the spectrum itself, but considering those different identities of maybe being a woman or female identifying, being a person of color, other overlapping mental health considerations is something I'm deeply passionate about. Because I always say, there's only certain things people can tell about me by looking at me, and there's a lot more that they can't tell by looking at me. So I appreciate the identification and kind of those covers and supports from the Commonwealth. So that's definitely a piece that I'm very passionate about, being the big sister, but also kind of living that experience as a self-advocate day to day.
Thank you. So we will definitely put these down. I hear there is some interest around having some further conversations. Go ahead, Senator Dorn.
Madam Chair, thank you. I think it's important to note moving forward with you having this coordinated research, what law enforcement, and then also, of course, our specialty dockets, the behavioral health dockets, how they are tied into this component in the training. There is, I don't know if any of my colleagues have visited any of the training. I think there's 11 training facilities in the Commonwealth right now, and they're strained for resources. And we want the best outcomes when you have these kind of stops, so that the latest and best practices are implemented. So I think that is going to be a component into moving forward with this, is that DCJS needs to be brought into the fold as we move forward, and how they can weigh in and what their bandwidth is as well. And also any type of coordination with our behavioral health dockets also. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Duran. I agree. I think we're going to have to build some base knowledge around some of these issues going forward. So that's definitely on my radar, perhaps even for the next, my hope is for the next meeting in December, we can maybe bring in some folks to kind of give us a baseline of what is happening. And I see a hand down there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to agree. There's actually, I sit on a lot of these things, right? And I think all of us worry that HB 888 and Marcus Alert and this, and that there's a lot of crosswork with some of the legislation. So I think it will be really important to bring that together. And on the other subject, I will say I completely agree on the identification. Not many people know about it. So the awareness needs to be there. And I wonder, when we look at Massachusetts and other states, if there are any of those kind of code options for people who worry that they don't I don't know what code so-and-so means when cops say it. Right? So are there different colors, codes, things that could be utilized to satisfy some of the concerns that people have?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the public awareness is a big piece of this. I personally did not know this, and I know a lot, I think, just as a parent advocate. And that had never come up in any of the conversations, any of the services, any of the spaces that I've been with my daughter. And then the comment that was made about how some folks may not want that designation. I definitely think that would be one of those conversations with my daughter as well. So I think those are spaces for us to maybe have an impact and do some work around. Are there any other topics that have been on the mind of folks, or anything you'd like to share? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to, there's way more topics than, right? So I think one thing, though, that I think is really important, and it's sort of, Brian brought this up, and I want to echo that. I think when we talk about autism, I think we have to remember, in this group in particular, whatever the topic is, that there is a subgroup of folks that have high support needs, and we don't want to leave them out of the conversation. I spent yesterday with Rose, and we were talking with a group of families and providers and different resource network folks. And one of the things that we find is that folks, particularly those who have people with high support needs, loved ones with high support needs, they are often not feeling like those needs are being addressed, whether that's in employment, whether that's in housing, whether it's in basic services. You mentioned access to care. And they're feeling really left behind in Virginia, and certainly in the communities, the 4 communities where we're located and providing services, we're seeing that. And so this idea of, profound autism, as the Lancet and the researchers have defined it, this idea of, we just need to be, I think, very cautious here because autism is such a wide spectrum, right, and the needs. And so I think it's really important and critical that whatever the issue is, we're looking to see, folks with high support needs, maybe medium support needs and low support needs, and we look at all those issues. So it's a big pool to jump into with, whether it's employment, whether it's rates for services, whether it's transportation, where do you want to go? We can go there. But I just think that part of what we can do is we can really help speak for those that can't speak for themselves in Virginia, and that in particular, some of those folks with higher support needs.
Thank you. I think that's a good reminder. And I also hope that going forward, and certainly today, that maybe we can invite those families to come out and share those experiences during public comment. I personally find that very useful. Unless you're living it, it's sometimes hard to come up with solutions as to the problems you think exist, but you may, not always hit it on the head. So I appreciate that, and I think that brings us to a good point. I mean, this is a vast array of topics, issues we could, discuss, and we wouldn't have enough time or space or ability to fix it all. So that's also a good reminder, I think, going forward in December as we are looking at some of the issues that were brought up, and we come together and decide what is it that we can kind of bite off this year for us to really feel like we've done some work to kind of move the ball forward. So for anyone, go ahead, Delegate Cohen.
Yeah, I think that is great. And I wonder, in our first year in talking about, coordinating with Behavioral Health Commission, also with our Disability Council, Advisory Council, because you think of and I know that Connor has spoken very eloquently about voting and guardianship, right? Like, we have some issues that and I think that's the difficult piece. Does it impact our community in a way that is disproportionate to some of the larger committees that we have? And so I agree with you, is how do we maybe have the opportunity, maybe in this first year, to coordinate with these other commissions, because there's no way that they can take on everything that they've taken on. So are there bits and pieces where we say, our community really is disproportionately impacted by guardianship or, X, Y, or Z. And maybe, you're definitely the right person to coordinate with those other chairs and see where we are. But I know Patrick's on a bunch of them. We have weird, all of us, kind of intersections of what we're on. So maybe we can be helpful to you too, to just say, here's the docket that, behavioral health has taken on, and here's what Disability Commission has taken on, and what are the pieces that we can kind of collectively as a community identify that we can maybe be more helpful to those committees. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, and I would also add, I know Delegate Coiner is now on the Behavioral Health Commission and has brought over from the Housing Commission, so I feel like we're always crossing paths with each other, and that would be a huge component, I think, with this one as well, so absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if anything comes up, if for those who are serving on some of these other commissions, you want to share with writing, in writing, kind of in the next month, I think we can definitely kind of compile those and bring them back in December and I will definitely, I think we can talk to the chairs and leadership of some of these other commissions to see what their thoughts are and share with all of you. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. Under the powers, it references this JLARC study in 2009. I just have a couple of questions. One, can we get a copy of that? And two, is it possible to get an update on where they are with implementing whatever plans are in there, since that's a 2009 study, so we can see what exactly hasn't been implemented, and just get an update, since part of our duties are to monitor that and then recommend any emerging issues. If one was sent to me, I apologize, I didn't get it, but that'd be very helpful.
Julia?
Madam Chair, I did find a copy of the original 2009 report that I can send to the Senate's clerk to have posted on the meeting webpage. Just a reminder that anything shared with all members of the commission also has to be publicly posted at the same time per FOIA rules. I will also try to find, I'm looking right now to try to see if I can find an update on the work that has been done in accordance with that. And if I do find that, I will also include that in the materials posted.
Thank you, Julia. And I actually think that is a perfect segue into an issue that has been brought to my attention by folks, and that is really the lack of coordinated data around experiences, services, needs, and a whole array of other outcomes for folks that are living with autism in the Commonwealth. And I think that is probably something that this commission council, should think about trying to tackle. It's my understanding that there are some federal programs maybe that can help us in gathering some of this information, but I think if we have some data around these issues, we will be able to make better informed and probably more impactful, decisions and recommendations to the legislature. So that's just something that I hope will be on your minds, and I'm happy to also, as part of the wrap up from this meeting, send out some of what has been shared with me for you to read and kind of opine on for our next meeting. So are there any other issues, questions, thoughts? Okay. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
An issue that's been on our mind a lot in talking to our families, and particularly as Brian and Ethan and others said, our families with kids with autism who are minors, who have very high support needs, and in fact are categorized as extraordinary care. There's a lot of work around making sure that parents, when that's in the best interest of the child, which is often, are recognized as such. And then I really think if there's posturing and modeling even by a group like this, that we change that conversation to valuing what those parents are doing. Not only is it in the best interest of the child when they have these extraordinary needs, but it's also helping with a workforce crisis and all of these things that are benefiting the state. And I know that there will be some legislation that goes in around this that honors and values parents of these kids with autism, but also with other developmental disabilities that have extraordinary needs. And I think if we could throw support and really start posturing that value that the parents, that role is. In a lot of commissions and comment and conversation, it feels like that's not there. So that's important to us.
Thank you for sharing that. I completely agree. It is a huge job. And I know, at least it's been shared with me in just my own personal experience. I know sometimes families just don't feel seen and understood. And it is all consuming. It is your life. So if we can do that, absolutely. I agree with you. Our parents are extraordinary in the things they are doing. I saw a hand go up.
Yeah, I was going to say too, when you mentioned the data, I think there are some state-based data sets too that can be leveraged to answer some questions too that maybe there hasn't been quite the emphasis on a diagnosis of autism, but could be. So, as part of that conversation, I would love to identify those data sets and talk about, what could be done with those that exist already, and there's already a lot of data collection going on.
That's great. I think that's exactly my thoughts and others. I think there was another hand that kind of went up, didn't go up.
I think I did.
Okay, I think it was you.
Probably. I absolutely would love to support with the data coordination piece as well. And then earlier, as you were mentioning, coordination with DCJS around agency training and autism awareness for law enforcement. We have a grant at the University of Virginia that's implementing statewide training for law enforcement on autism over the next few years. So I'd love to make sure that we can support you all in coordinating any efforts that come out of this. Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you. I didn't know that. It's wonderful. This side of the room, my quieter side. That's okay. Okay. Seeing no other comments from the committee, I think we're going to go ahead and open it up to public comment. If we have anyone, please come.
Good afternoon. I think I know half of you at least. My name is Brian Kelmar. I'm the president of Decriminalized Developmental Disabilities. I work with parents here in Virginia and unfortunately all over the United States who get caught up in the criminal justice system. And a lot of times it is a result of crisis, whether it's small children getting caught up because they act out in school and they call the SRO and they get handcuffed at 6 and 10 and 12 years old, which you've seen in the news recently, or whether there are older situations where parents have a breakdown when they call 911. And by the way, I think Rose will point out to you, a lot of parents and people with autism are afraid to call 911 or 988 because the result is typically they're getting caught up in the law enforcement. Yeah. And I think this group is here to help support our community. I'm also, to mention, a father of an autistic son. But unfortunately, the way things are written now, they typically end up in jail. When we call 988, we don't have places to take them to. We take them to the state hospital, or we say they have comorbid mental health and autism. I have heart disease, but it has nothing to do with my feet. They're two separate things. And just because you have mental health doesn't mean your autism or one's causing the other. A lot of times with autism, it's because they're triggered by a light, a sound, overwhelming, or something that's triggering. And once that trigger is taken away, it's de-escalated and it's over. Unfortunately, the way our system goes, they'll end up in mental hospital. They'll have to be, quote, go through therapy and all this other things, when typically it's just more than about 20 minutes later, the kid's fine. And a lot of times, as we heard in the commissions, is that they end up in the jails because they call for help and nobody's around or nobody's there at 6 o'clock in the evening on a Saturday night, and they end up in jail, and now they have charges against them. Once they go into the prison system or jail system, you have just devastated a person's life with autism forever, and you have not reversed it. You have just made our lives of family members and the individual just beyond belief. And I know that from personal experience, and I still feel it today. I hope this group takes a look at that, and one of the big things that I think we need to look at is keeping them out of the prison system. That's why we're called decriminalized developmental disabilities. I've heard the commissions of a couple of policies and things that are coming on, and they sound all great, but I still get, and most of you that know me, I still get calls every single day, usually 2 or 3 times a day, from a parent is, my son has been arrested. And I hear the same story over and over. So whatever we're doing is not working, because I'm still getting those calls. So I'd like to hope that we look at steps that we can get them out of the criminal justice system along the way. I have recently proposed legislation, which I've shared with some delegates and senators recently, that I've actually worked out already with the Legislative Policy Committee, Charles, and I've worked with lawyers to write that. And that's an intermediate step. And what it does, it takes diversion, which I helped work with SB 133 back in 2020, not to the sentencing phase, and Senator Favola brought that in, is bring that back as early as possible. Because every single day that goes by, that parent is waiting for what is going to happen and when the next shoe is going to drop, the impact financially, mentally, socially, whatever it may be, is just going up by 100-fold every single day. And unfortunately, we've lost 3 kids already to suicide because of those situations. Let's move that up to the beginning of the process so they have the opportunity to get out. I'm looking for a home for that bill, so I hope this committee can consider that. I can share it with y'all, but it's already been written into legislative policy. One of the things you mentioned is Massachusetts. So I do have families in Massachusetts, and I am familiar with what they use, and it is pretty effective. It was actually brought over by a gentleman from, I believe, from Sweden. And what it does early intervention so that when these situations happen, they take them to a home, and they put them in a place where they can de-escalate. There's one right here in town called Q Life. I've actually taken Commonwealth Attorney Shannon Taylor out there. It's in Henrico. And what it does is they take them to, it looks like it's a regular house in a regular neighborhood. What a great place to de-escalate. And they work there with counselors. And there's people there to enforce, but they don't look like enforcers. They're actually in jeans and T-shirts. And they work with the person to de-escalate it. And then they help them get set up. And that's similar to a model that they have in Massachusetts. So I suggest we really look at that. I'm also familiar with Louisiana, which is pretty wild, right? Louisiana has a situation, and this is one of the things I think we need now, is an intermediate, why all these great policies are being done. So that when this situation happens, that you have a call and this person's ending up in jail. I know Heather's given us her personal number, and I can call her. But in Louisiana, they have a number that you can call, and that triggers a lot of response. Who's the CSB? Who's the psychologist? Who's the support? Who are the medical people? Who are the dental people? Who are all these people that need to come in and figure out what the issues and support? And it's like a SWAT team shows up, but it's a SWAT team, not like the real SWAT team, which is showing up now, but a SWAT team of support and help. And we need to have that right now while we figure out all these things, because a lot of the issues that we're looking at here are very complicated and very difficult, and each individual is different. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but you can have a group that can coordinate that on a Friday night or Saturday morning or whatever it is, because that's the times when the issues occur. They don't occur from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, as much as certain groups like to think they do and that they can support. That's not when it happens. So I hope you consider that and take that as part of this group. And let's keep our kids out of the prison system and decriminalize our disabilities and not put them in there. Thank you.
I don't know. So I certainly learned a few things. And if you want to go ahead and submit any of what you were discussing with your bill in writing, we can also disseminate it to the folks on the committee. Okay, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Teresa Champion with the Virginia Autism Project. I am so excited you all are here. I'm thrilled. Thank you all so much for committing your time and your effort. This is so important, and I think Delegate Cohen said it exactly right. There are issues that affect all of our lives, but they affect our community much more disproportionately, have a greater impact. And that's what we need to be focusing on. So I have a list, but it's just an overarching list. Brian mentioned someone to call, an ombudsman, because he fields those questions. We field those questions at the Virginia Autism Project. I know Ann fields those questions. Many of you up here do. And we need a place where they can call, and you're right, Heather Norton has given us her cell phone number, and then she'll jump in and intervene, but that isn't the way the process should work. And the process should be, as Senator Favola had given the recommendations from the Behavioral Health Commission, a continuum of care, rather than this patchwork that we have. So a central location, they make the phone call, and it's handed off, and the services follow. So Senate Bill 176 and House Bill 888 was supposed to do that. That's what that work group was supposed to do. And I will be very vocal and tell you, they completely dropped the ball for autism. They did some great recommendations for traumatic brain injury and dementia and other groups, but all of that was in the pipeline already. Those work groups had met. They had their recommendations, and this group just pushed it forward. That's great, and I think that those groups will benefit. So ultimately, what they failed to do, which may be what the wonderful thing that's going to come out of this group, the timing of this probably couldn't be any better, is that you all will end up looking at this issue. Where do you go? Where does someone go when they're in crisis? And who helps them, and who do families call? And it can't be a mental health hospital, and JLARC has already told you that repeatedly, and that 2009 JLARC report, you won't find any updates on recommendations on all the things they were supposed, that never happened. That report came out when we started our autism insurance reform, and we were thrilled to see it, but it went into the waste bin somewhere, or the 3-ring binder bookshelf on the wall. So I have also, so I'm thrilled that hopefully it will come to you all, but you need a staff who can do that level of research. And as much work as these individuals put into it, they have a lot of other things to do too. And so we're very grateful for what you all do in support of all of these organizations, but you all need a paid staff to do the level of research that the Behavioral Health Commission staff does. I mean, the things that come out of the Behavioral Health Commission are listened to because they have a very high level of expertise in their staff and their recommendations. So you all need that too. Criminal justice reform, that was one of my topics, but I won't go into it. Brian covered it beautifully. These are vulnerable adults and children that end up in the criminal justice system, and they need to be diverted. So at the point that they enter that system, they need to be diverted away from it, wherever that is. If a school's resource officer calls, or if a parent calls, whoever calls. Social service support. So there's a wonderful group in Charlottesville, Craig, who has been looking at the SIS for many years and has taken great pains to research that and followed every step of the way. The SIS is the supports intensity scale, where everyone who has a Medicaid waiver has to take this SIS, and it happens every 3 to 5 years. Now, I try not to cry in public, but I will tell you I have cried at every single one of those SIS in my home. It is the most traumatic process to go through for families. And you're just looking at it going, it's just a bunch of questions I ask these, No, it is horrible. So my SIS have been up to 3 hours long. I think they've gone longer. I think they cut it off at 3 hours, but I think it's gone as much as 4 or 5. So look at that. and the complex behaviors that are brought by profound autism, which was a term coined by the Lancet recently to describe the level of autism on the spectrum that need these intensive supports. They were not reflected in the CIS scores that families were getting. And so consequently, they were not getting the support and level of support and care that they need. Well, then when you do get the level and support that you need, then you go back and you take the CIS, and if those behaviors aren't occurring, guess what? You get knocked down level in your CIS, so you're not going to get those behaviors and supports the supports for those behaviors anymore. So now you're in this vicious cycle. So let's look at that and how we're using that tool. 16-hour limit for attendant care. Many of us are in-home caregivers for someone on the spectrum. And so that's a 24/7 job. And limiting that 16 hours, we understand, is a federal law that came out. However, the federal law says you can work up to 16 hours, and then after that, guess what? You get overtime. Virginia doesn't seem to want to pay overtime. I'm not surprised, but consequently, families are having to care for someone, and it's hard to find people who, well, we won't go into the workforce issues. I'm sure that will be one of your agenda items. So let's look at that 16-hour limit and the way Virginia is limiting families to that. Housing. This is another issue that the Charlottesville group has taken up, and you all mentioned it, so I know that that's going to be a focus, and that's so very much needed. The tracking of tasks now that families are going to have to do with this new CellTrack, CellTrack, the new app. So tracking of tasks that are going to be matched to their plans. Well, guess what? Many families don't even have a copy of their care plan. I know so frequently you will ask for that. Oh, well. So we need to be able to access the database. I think it's WAMS, where these things are held. You can do that. You can give us a portal where we can access those documents and we can just download them. Why is that so hard for the state to do? Well, I was on a training recently about this new program they have, asked that question, and well, we're looking at it, it might be, we're getting there. No, this is not that hard. If you're gonna hold me accountable for tasks that I'm doing in my home caring for my loved one, and you're gonna cross-reference those, and if they don't match that care plan, guess what? You're gonna claw that money back? No. You need to make that data and that information accessible. So medical providers for adults. Hopefully this is something you'll also look at, because as we age into adulthood, there are fewer trained physicians who are willing to take someone who is autistic, and especially someone who is profoundly autistic. So there are no medical providers. The data and metrics. This is I learned from watching the Behavioral Health Commission that data, which they call metrics, is something that drives funding, something that drives the legislature. So us knowing what the data and the metrics is for our adults who have a diagnosis of autism is going to drive everything, going to drive policy. Let's show them. So again, that's why you need that high level of staff that is able to do all of that research. Let's see, I think that about covers it for today. So again, in closing, I am so grateful you all are here. I am so excited you're here, and I'm really looking forward to working with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate. Is there anyone else? Anyone online? Okay, wonderful. Do we have any closing remarks from anyone on the committee? I want to thank our public speakers. Obviously, there's a lot of passion and a lot of issues for us to look at. I want to thank all of you for being here today. I personally am very excited about this council, and I think we can do a lot of good work. So I appreciate you taking your time and bringing your expertise to the council. We will be following up, as I said earlier, with some information and hopefully get a meeting on the books for December so we can actually start doing some of the work that you all are here, I know, and eager to do. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn if there is one.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All righty, so be it. All those in favor? Okay, thank you.
The Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B306. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, B 306.